The all-time best power forwards from every NBA team in the history of every team's history, ever, ranked. You should know how this goes by now, but if you don't, here's the rules. Players can only be used for one team, and all of these rankings are based on how good players played just for that one team. Links for the other videos are in the description, so let's go. Number 30, the Magic with Horace Grant. His best years were definitely on the Bulls, but he beats out Rashard Lewis here for his longevity in defense while in Orlando. 29, the 76ers and Billy Cunningham. Barkley would take this one, but he's gonna make it on another team. 28, the Nets and Buck Williams. Really not many talented power forwards in Nets history, so it goes to Williams. Next. 27 with the Nuggets and Dan Iso. Talented player, but by far had all of his best days in the ABA. Then the Grizzlies take 26 for Zach Randolph, who is the least flashiest NBA player you'll ever see, but had some solid years in Memphis. Pau Gasol was considered here, but he's going to be mentioned later too. Number 25 goes to Larry Johnson from the Hornets. Without question, 100% the best Hornets power forward ever, because there's no competition. Even if there was though, Larry was still a great player. For 24, we have the Raptors and Pascal Siakam. And if anything, I'm underrating Pascal here, because I didn't want to overrate a player so early into his NBA career. I really think Siakam's the total package though, and I'd say he's the player that a lot of people wanted Serge Ibaka to turn into once he stopped being known as just a shot blocker. Don't get me wrong, Serge has been great, but he never turned into a player as great all around as Pascal is, which is part of the reason that he beats out Ibaka for this spot. And yes, it's unusual, but Chris Bosh is gonna be ranked on another team. 23, the Rockets and Ralph Sampson. Bruh. It's not often you get a 7'4" power forward, but the Rockets had that to play alongside Hakeem Olajuwon, and the duo made a great run to the '88 finals and looked like they'd be a threat for years to come. But luckily for Houston, they traded Ralph right before all of his injuries started and his young career went downhill. The Pistons take number 22 for Rasheed Wallace, and his best days were in Portland, but was still a key player and a two-time All-Star for Detroit for years during the second half of his career. Number 21 goes to Jermaine O'Neal and the Indiana Pacers. And Jermaine did play center for most of his career, but the years that he played power forward for Indiana were by far his best. And he really was a dominant two-way player, averaging 20, 10, and 2.5 blocks a game for almost 3 years in a row. Number 20, the Cavs with Kevin Love. Now if we're ranking the Timberwolves Kevin Love, this man would be much higher. But as we know, things changed once he got to Cleveland. And it's not even because he was playing with LeBron or didn't fit on the team or anything like that. Because we've seen this past season how he's back on a terrible team, fully healthy and everything, still just not the player that he used to be. He's still a solid 17 and 10 guy, and his 2016 championship does help his ranking, but the fact that he didn't play good and was injured in that finals, and has been injured many times since being in Cleveland, drops his ranking back down some. 19, LaMarcus Aldridge from the Trailblazers. It's weird to think about the NBA back in the early 2010s because back then the race for best power forward in the league was pretty often between both Kevin Love and Aldridge, with LaMarcus holding that spot down pretty unanimously for a few years there. And the weird part just comes from how since then, we've seen guys like Giannis and Anthony Davis come along and be much better power forwards than he ever was. So it's weird to think that at one time he was the best in the league. And it's also weird because that was really his only claim to fame since being in the league. I mean, there's some good playoff runs in there, but that's about it. 18, the Clippers and Blake Griffin. Both Blake and LaMarcus could easily be switched out, and it's a close call on who ranks higher. Both men averaged similar numbers and both made decent playoff runs, but Griffin's by far the better passer and the slightly better three-point shooter, while LA was much better at mid-range, but still Blake's always been at least a solid mid-range shooter, and we've seen Griffin's game develop a lot more throughout the years, so we put him slightly ahead. One spot ahead of him though is Shawn Kemp for the Thunder at 17, who beats out Serge Ibaka by a good amount. But honestly, I probably would have ranked Kemp one spot below Aldridge had it have not been for his one finals appearance, because Blake, LA, and Shawn are all pretty similar talent-wise, but with him being the only one that made it that close to a championship, alongside Gary Payton, it was an easy choice to rank him here. Then we have the Kings with Chris Webber at 16, who had no competition for this spot, and he was a solid defender, great on offense, and better on that end than Blake, Kemp, and Aldridge. And given the logic that I used to rank those three, with Kemp being ahead of them because of his finals appearance, I rank Webber ahead of all of them. Well, for one, because like I said, he was the better player, but also because if his game 6 hadn't have been rigged, he most definitely would have won a championship of his own with the Kings. so that argument can't really be used against Webber. 15. Dave DeBusschere for the Knicks. Great two-way player that averaged 16 and 11 for his career, but also made the all-defensive first team 6 years in a row. And that skill set helped the Knicks win their 2 championships in the 70s and got him into the Basketball Hall of Fame. Then Dennis Rodman takes number 14 for the Chicago Bulls. And Rodman's a weird guy to rank. In terms of skill, he'd rank in at number 30. But since he helped the Bulls win 3 of their championships and dominated rebounds and defensively as one of the best third options in a Big 3 ever, is what made him rank this high. And the fact that he also led the NBA in rebounds every single year that he played for Chicago also helped him out. 13. The Warriors and Draymond Green. And Draymond's another weird one to rank. I'll admit, this could be a few spots too high or too low for Draymond Green, but I guess I feel like that means he's in a good spot, right around where he should be. Either way though, I had to rank him slightly ahead of Dennis Rodman, and this is another one that could have gone either way. Both guys won 3 championships with their respective teams, and were at least third options on them. And even though Rodman was a much better defender and rebounder by a good margin, in every other sense of the game, Draymond Green is a much better and diverse player. He's a floor general, an okay scorer, a great passer, good rebounder, good at getting steals and blocks, and a great defender. So he beat out Dennis, but comment if you think he should have or not. 12. The Heat with Chris Bosh. Personally, Bosh played much better while in Toronto, but for the fact that he took all of his skills and put his ego to the side to win 2 championships with the Heat, we rank him for his Miami Heat years instead. And that transition that Bosh made usually isn't one that earns a guy like him a ton of credit, but he deserves it. Not many guys could have made that switch that he did, and have gone from a star player to a third option. But eventually he thrived in that role, and was a huge piece for Miami in all of his years there. The Lakers then take number 11 with Pau Gasol. And no, Anthony Davis's half season there doesn't rank over Pau's entire career there. But it was an easy choice to rank Pau ahead of Bosh, because I mean, they really served the same role on their teams. They needed to post up, space the floor to mid-range, and sometimes 3 when needed, and they were asked to play defense as best as they could. And not to mention, both men won 2 championships on their teams. The only difference was that Chris Bosh was a third option to LeBron and Wade, while Pau was a second option to Kobe Bryant, so he ranks higher. Number 10, Anthony Davis with the Pelicans. And 80 is another tricky one, because for the past few guys, how they performed in the postseason and how they helped championship teams played a big part in the ranking. And now here's Davis having only played 13 playoff games and having only won 5 of them. But on the other hand, he's by far the best player skill-wise up until this point. And I don't know for sure, but chances are, if he would have taken anybody's role on any of those other teams previously mentioned, those teams would definitely have had just as much or more success than they did. So I decided to rank him here, but I could see how this one could be controversial too. If he wins any championships though, and plays a big part in it, he'll definitely deserve to be ranked this high, and much higher in the future though. Number 9, Elvin Hayes for the Wizards. Hayes isn't talked about too often unless you're mentioning Wizards all-time greats, because he's definitely one of them and one of the 50 greatest players of all time according to the NBA's old top 50 list. And as for on the Wizards, he's definitely their best power forward, having no true competition here. The Atlanta Hawks are at number 8 with Bob Pettit. Some people think of Josh Smith when they think of who should be in this spot, but he's no contest for Pettit, who averaged 29 and 16 in his best season, won 2 MVP awards, an NBA championship, and was an 11-time All-Star. Number 7, Kevin McHale for the Celtics. And like many other power forwards so far, McHale was a great second option that could do it all. He averaged 20 and 10 whether he was doing it while winning the 6th Man of the Year award or doing so while playing some of the best defense in basketball and helping Larry Bird win his 3 championships in the 80s. Number 6, the Bucks and Giannis. And number 30 through 7, mostly, not all, but mostly consisted of guys that were either second or third options and were complementary players to other stars and helped them win. But these last 6 are all superstar players in their own rights, and Giannis is definitely one of them. And at only 25, I had to rank him this high because of that. Because he's the star on his team, won his own MVP, and averages 30 and 13 on some of the most efficient play in the league today. There's no doubt in my mind that very soon he will climb much higher on this list. I mean, who knows just how high he can get when it's all said and done. But if the man keeps things up how he has been, then the sky really is the limit. Number 5, Kevin Garnett for the Timberwolves. With the way things are going, Giannis is definitely on the path to rank higher than KG very soon. But Garnett had 11 great years for Minnesota, while Giannis has had 3 as a power forward for the Bucks. The only thing Giannis needs is more time, but until then, KG still stays inside the top 5. And as one of the best two-way power forwards the NBA has ever seen, he deserves to be. Number 4, the Phoenix Suns with Charles Barkley. Garnett was a much better defender than Barkley was, and Charles was the better scorer, while both men won MVP awards. The only difference was that the season Barkley won his, he also led the Phoenix Suns to the NBA Finals and took Michael Jordan and the Bulls to 6 games, while KG never made the finals in Minnesota, which is why Chuck ranks slightly higher. Number 3, the Utah Jazz with Karl Malone. And he ranks here for obvious reasons. Now, putting his past personal life to the side for this discussion, we have to give it to Karl for the fact that he was the perfect and best prototypical power forward that you could ever ask for. Great on offense, great on defense, great in the pick and roll, won 2 MVPs, 2 NBA Finals, second most points ever scored, and had the longevity of a Nokia. Number 2, the Mavs with Dirk Nowitzki. Semi-controversial one here because Karl Malone is almost unanimously known on everyone's list to be the second greatest power forward of all time, but I'm changing that here. Karl was definitely the much better defender, had a few more years playing at a top level, and he has 2 MVPs compared to Dirk's 1. But Nowitzki revolutionized the game for big men. He's the much better shooter from mid-range and 3, and while both men made 2 NBA Finals, let's keep in mind a couple things. If the one in 2006 wasn't pretty much rigged, he would have won 2 championships. But still, even without that, he still won 1, which is more than Karl. Dirk also beat the best player in the world at the time of him playing when Malone couldn't. And let's also remember the biggest factor here, that Karl Malone got all of his career accomplishments, while his best teammate for his entire career is all-time great John Stockton, while Dirk's best all-time teammate was Jason Terry. Then we have number 1, the Spurs with Tim Duncan, and I'd say probably 95% of people all would unanimously agree that this is Tim Duncan's spot, so I don't need to really explain anything, and as for you 5%, slap yourself twice. But that's gonna wrap things up. We got the last centers video coming up next, so if you're not already subscribed, I mean, what are you doing at this point? You've made it all the way to the power forwards and you're not subscribed. But if you aren't, subscribe now so you won't miss that video. Drop a like, comment your thoughts on this one, and I'll catch you next time.